Every day for 80 years, she watched the world from this window. She saw the seasons change, watched neighbors be born and die, saw little children grow into old men. She was a silent observer, a permanent part of this town, like the old church or the town square. But on her last day, the world looked back at her and saw that she was not alone. Her name was Amelia. She was a quiet, almost invisible part of a small New England town. No one could remember when she first sat down at that window. It seemed she had always been there. Neighbors set their clocks by her. If Amelia was in the window, the morning had begun. The mailman waved to her. Children sometimes made faces as they passed, but she never reacted. She just sat, watching, her silhouette etched against the light from the room. She was a mystery, but a familiar and harmless one, until one day, her last day. This story is not just an account of a strange incident. It is a deep dive into a mystery that touched an entire town and made the most hardened skeptics question reality. Before we open the door to Amelia's house, I ask you to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon. Together, we will piece this puzzle together, and you definitely won't want to miss the shocking conclusion. Your support is the only way to continue such complex investigations. It was a typical autumn Tuesday. Dave, the mailman, was on his usual route. He knew the ritual. Upon reaching Amelia's house, he would raise his hand in greeting. He had been doing this for the last 30 years. But on this day, something was wrong. Amelia's silhouette was in its place, but next to her, almost touching, was another one. Dark, tall, indistinct. Dave stopped and rubbed his eyes. He thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow from the old tree, but the shadow didn't move. It was just there, next to Amelia. Dave felt an inexplicable anxiety and quickened his pace. He wasn't the only one who noticed it. Several neighbors, out for a morning run or walking their dogs, also saw the strange figure in the window. The day passed. In the evening, the light in Amelia's window did not turn on, which was unusual. The silhouettes disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, the curtains were still open, and the window looked empty. This was the most alarming part. Amelia's empty window was more frightening than the two silhouettes. Her neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, after several hours of hesitation, dialed 911. She told the dispatcher, "Something's wrong with Amelia, and yesterday there was someone in the window with her." Two police officers arrived at the scene. The door was locked from the inside. Getting no response, they forced the lock. Inside the house, time seemed to have stopped. A thin layer of dust covered the antique furniture, and the clock on the wall was not ticking. Amelia was found in her chair by that very window. She had passed away in her sleep, quietly and peacefully. Doctors would later determine that her death was due to natural causes, having occurred about a day earlier. But the main question remained unanswered. The officers searched the entire house, the attic, the basement, every room. The house was empty. There were no signs of a second person, no forced entry, no foreign fingerprints, no disturbances. Amelia was completely alone, but dozens of people had seen someone else. How was this possible? The investigation hit a dead end, and the case might have been closed, if not for one thing. Amelia's grandniece, who came to sort through her belongings, found an old trunk in the attic. Inside were yellowed letters and a single photo album. And this album shed light on the tragedy of Amelia's life. It turned out that in her youth, Amelia was madly in love. Her fiancé's name was Elias. He was a sailor, tall, handsome, always in uniform. They were supposed to get married, but his ship set sail and never returned. It sank during a storm in 1944. All crew members were declared dead. Amelia never married. She waited her whole life for him, sitting by the window that overlooked the road to the port. She waited for almost 80 years. Amelia's niece gave the police the photographs of young Elias, and that's when the detectives felt a chill. One of the neighbors, a teenager keen on photography, had taken several pictures of the street that very morning, and one of them, taken with a long focus lens, showed Amelia's window. The image was blurry and indistinct, but when it was enhanced and compared with the photos from the album, there was no doubt. The dark, tall silhouette next to Amelia was incredibly similar to the silhouette of young Elias in his naval uniform. This is the most obvious and most mystical theory. Could the spirit of Elias, her eternal love, have returned for her at the hour of her death? Could he, invisible to all, have come to escort her to the next world? This theory explains why he was seen, but no physical traces were found. He was not a man of flesh and blood. For many townspeople, this version became the only comfort. It wasn't a scary story, but a beautiful one, about a love stronger than time and death. They believed that Amelia's 80 years of waiting were not in vain. He had returned for her. Skeptics and psychologists offered another explanation. What if there was no second figure at all? The town is small, everyone knows each other. Dave, the respected mailman, saw something strange, a shadow, a trick of light, and mentioned it. Then the information cascade effect took over. Other people, hearing about it, also began to see the figure, subconsciously constructing the image. This is a known phenomenon where collective expectation shapes perception. Amelia had always been alone, and the very idea of someone next to her was so shocking that the brain itself created the illusion. The teenager's photograph? That could be attributed to pareidolia, the tendency to see familiar patterns in random shapes, like faces in clouds. The police couldn't completely dismiss a criminal angle. What if someone was secretly living in Amelia's house? A distant relative no one knew about, or a homeless person who found shelter? Perhaps this person was caring for her in her final days. After her death, they got scared of being blamed and fled without a trace. This would explain the second silhouette. But this theory falls apart on several facts. How could they enter and leave a house locked from the inside? Why didn't they take any valuables? And how could they be an exact copy of a sailor from a 1944 photograph? This version raises more questions than it answers. There is another, more complex theory, at the intersection of physics and metaphysics. It's called residual memory, or the stone tape theory. According to this hypothesis, strong emotional events can be imprinted onto a space. For 80 years, Amelia sat in that chair, thinking of Elias, replaying his image in her memory. Perhaps at the moment of her death, her emotional energy reached a peak and briefly projected his image into reality. He was neither a ghost nor a person. He was an echo of love and longing that became visible for a few hours. So who was sitting next to Amelia in her final hour? A returned lover? A figment of the town's collective imagination? A real person? Or simply an echo from the past? We have the testimonies of dozens of witnesses, one blurry photograph, and a love story that survived an entire era. But we have no definitive answer. Perhaps there isn't meant to be one. Amelia's story became something more than just a mystery for the town. It became a legend that there are things science cannot measure or explain, that faithfulness can last forever, and love can overcome even the barrier of death. Amelia's house still stands on that street. The new residents have covered the window with heavy curtains. But sometimes, when passing by at twilight, the locals slow their pace and gaze at it. And some of them feel that for a split second, they can see two silhouettes there, finally together.